Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Nitro Striker, and welcome to my first episode of my podcast, Striked Out. Today, we're going to be talking about Sifu and what makes it fun and why I believe you guys should give it a chance. Sifu is a single player indie title fighter where, unlike classic fighter franchises such as Street Fighter, Tekken, or Smash Bros., Sifu plays a lot differently. The main game consists of 5 different levels, with you going to each location to take out a different target. The narrative of the story follows the concept of revenge. It's kind of like Kill Bill, where basically the player is going to avenge their father by taking out every individual that was there for that one day. To understand how the game works and why it's fun, we have to look at MDA. MDA stands for Mechanics, Dynamics, and Aesthetics. So, mechanics. What makes Sifu a unique fighting game is the fact that there is a aging mechanic. Essentially, when the player dies, they come back to life instead of getting a game over. You see, the player has this magical amulet that has 5 tokens. Essentially, every single time you age 10 years, you will lose a token, meaning that you will do more damage to enemies, but you will also have less health. My friends, I am going to introduce you to the second mechanic, the structure bar. Essentially, the player can block as many attacks as they can with a structure bar, but when it fills up, it breaks the user's structure, making them vulnerable to attacks and possibly death. Don't worry, you are not the only one with a structure bar, as every enemy in the game has one as well. If you break it, you can execute them, giving you the ability to heal yourself if you have taken damage previously. And every single time you defeat an enemy in the game, you get experience points, which I'll be referring to as XP, where you can then spend these XP points at shrines. Essentially, shrines give the player the ability to spend their experience points, and it also gives the player the ability to choose a perk that will help them throughout their journey. And for some quick basic mechanics, the player has a health bar, basic combos, blocking, dodging, and heavy and light attacks. According to the MDA reading, mechanics include expansive tech and skill trees, a variety of enemy unit types, and levels or areas with variable ranges of mobility, visibility, and field of view, and so on. Dynamics. When it comes to Sifu, there is no platforming or puzzle solving. The game itself is a challenge. The game does this by developing pressure. Since players have a very limited health bar, they have to be careful when fighting groups of enemies, as there can be brutes, grunts, boxers, kickboxers, and enemies that use weapons in combat. Another interesting dynamic is collectibles. Throughout each level, players can collect certain items to learn more about the story of the characters that the protagonist is hunting, and that they could also have access to items that will provide them shortcuts if they were to ever revisit the level. However, it might hinder their progress in terms of gaining XP and having perks from shrines. Additionally, through observations by playing the game, the main protagonist will collect notes on how to defeat certain enemies if the player is stuck. Aesthetics. Sifu has a short narrative, as the protagonist visits each target's domain, beats everyone within the facility that is in their way, and defeats the boss of the domain. Now, what makes this game fun for you guys is the challenge to stay alive, or as young as possible, to get justice on the targets that wronged the protagonist. Now let me ask you, has there ever been like a moment where you've been struggling with something and sometimes you maybe had to take a break, or you just keep trying and you persevered? Yeah, this is one of those games where the game could be perceived as a pastime, though mostly this game will be interpreted as a challenge, and maybe in some way you can gain some sensation through perseverance, determination, and discipline to learn the game mechanics and the dynamics to essentially get good. And as I previously mentioned in the dynamics section, you can replay levels. Now what if I told you that there was a secret ending? And what if I told you that this game is more than just a beat 'em up trying to get revenge, and that there really is actually more to the story than that meets the eye? Here we turn to Boghost. Yeah, that's how you pronounce it, and that's how you spell it. So, Boghost. He's a guy who talked about toaster critics, and where he gives a couple of quotes, such as, "Games insert themselves into our lives, weaving within and between our daily practices, both structuring and disrupting them." He also says, "But then we also have to admit that games are something more than just non-descript vessels that deliver varying dosages of video pleasure." They include characters and personas with whom we can identify and empathize. We might do with a novel or film. To which I would have to argue with the consumer. If you like a game about getting revenge, but learning that revenge isn't the right way, this is a pretty good experience. However, Bogos also addresses that it can be unhealthy. But then games also extend well beyond the usual payloads of those other media into frustration, anguish, physical exhaustion, and addictive desperation. Again, this game is actually pretty difficult until you really get a handle on how to block and parry and dodge certain attacks for like specific bosses and certain levels, which I will not share. Instead, I'll actually show it on screen right here. But essentially, the message that I'm trying to share is that gaming has become a big part of our lives. And I guess, in a way, Sifu can be interpreted as a practice in our daily lives where we keep fighting and we keep trying. And even though through failure, we kind of grow and learn, even though we get older, we get stronger and wiser. And I guess one very precious concept about this game is that every game can be a learning experience, whether it be questionably violent or pretty relaxing in terms of like farming. I feel like every game has a lesson. And so I end this podcast by saying thank you for listening. I appreciate you guys for sticking around, and I hope to see you guys all in the next one. Peace.